Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we will be talking about Alice Munro, the 2013 winner of the Nobel Prize in Literature. Alice Munro was born in July of 1931 and passed away in May of 2024. She won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 2013 for Master of the Contemporary Short Story. Today I will be talking about a little bit of her literature, but more about her work and especially her daughter, Andrea Skinner, who was sexually abused by Munro's second husband, Andrea's stepfather, when she was only 9 years old. This is a very difficult video to make because I started this channel because I wanted to talk about female authors, especially because they are so underrepresented when it comes to literary prizes and literature in general. Patriarchy is really putting us all down, and I want to talk about and celebrate all of the female authors who are doing incredible work. I thought it would be interesting to read a book from each of the female Nobel laureates in literature. However, this project, looking into the life and works of Alice Munro, really showed me that just because a person is a woman, it doesn't mean that I necessarily want to platform them. Unfortunately, Alice Munro sided with her molesting pedophilic second husband when she learned about the abuse of her youngest daughter, and in the words of Andrea Skinner, her daughter, she acted like she learned about infidelity rather than the abuse that happened. This is a really difficult topic, and if you do not want to listen to more of the story of Andrea Skinner, please check out some of my other videos. As I mentioned, I talk about every woman who won the Nobel Prize in Literature. There are other videos of people whose story does not include such sad incidents. Shortly after the death of Alice Munro, her daughter, Andrea Skinner, published an essay in the Toronto Star, to which I will provide a link in the description of this video, so you can read the entirety of it if you're interested. It is a jarring tale of abuse, isolation, shame, and loss of family members as a victim of sexual abuse. Andrea Skinner writes about her life experience going through abuse and being molested by her stepfather, and relating to this channel and what we are doing here, she also writes about how this impacted her relationship with her mother, the famous author Alice Munro. I do not wish to start a witch hunt or to talk about someone's private life in a way that disrespects their legacy. I do, however, believe that how one treats their children is part of their legacy. And so I feel that it is incredibly important that we talk about Andrea Skinner when it comes to Alice Munro. She is very well known. She got a Nobel Prize in Literature, for God's sake. Her writings and her books are talked about already. Unfortunately, her biographies do not all talk about what happened to her daughter and how she handled that. So in today's video, we will be focusing on that. The essay of Andrea Skinner is pretty long, so I would like to focus on one paragraph that encapsulates why I chose not to read an entire book from Alice Munro once I started feeling a disconnect and discomfort as I was reading her short stories. I quote, "In spite of the letters and threats, my mother went back to Fremlin and stayed with him until he died in 2013. She said she had been told too late, she loved him too much, and that misogynistic culture was to blame if I expected her to deny her own needs, sacrifice for her children, and make up for the failings of men. She was adamant that whatever had happened was between me and my stepfather. It had nothing to do with her. End quote. These last two sentences, the abuse of a child, your own child, who you are the guardian of, being abused by your own husband, having nothing to do with you, even though you were the one who left the child in charge of your husband, is what makes this unforgivable in my eyes. No guardian should discard the responsibility that comes with raising children, and to side with an abuser in this case is horrible. And it's not something that I take lightly, and it's not something that I can just separate from her prose. I am incapable of that, and I do not wish to do that. Many a person did it. The Nobel Committee did it, in a sense. When I was reading into how people are evaluated by the Nobel Committee, the person who was interviewed, who is currently part of the Nobel Committee, mentioned that they do not care about people's personal lives, which is their prerogative. How lucky is it that I have this channel to talk about my own feelings and how I choose to read? And I personally deeply care about the people whose books I'm reading. I look at reading like a conversation with the author, and oftentimes it is so incredible to have this conversation with people smarter than me, with people who have different life experiences, who can teach me so much about the world. And then other times I feel uncomfortable. That is one of the reasons why I stopped focusing so much on books written by men, classics per se, and I started reading more obscure books that are lesser known, that are written by people who I'm truly really excited about. Unfortunately, as I was reading Alice Munro's short stories, I was really disappointed both in her subjects and how she was handling certain topics that I think are really important, and how she was talking about it really didn't resonate with me at all. So, moving forward, at the end of this video, I would like to talk a little bit about the two short stories that I tried reading or read. At first, I thought I would read Runaway, which is a short story collection of 10 or 12 stories and was published in 2004, and I started with the short story, which is also titled Runaway, the title story. This story was about a young woman who is stuck in an abusive relationship, and in the very beginning of the story there is a false rape accusation, which was my first ick moment, I would like to say, the first time where I felt really worried about what I was going to be reading. False rape accusations are largely overrepresented in media, and so I do not appreciate them whatsoever. I know they happen, but they do not happen at the rates that they are represented, and so they enrage me really badly. But I kept soldiering on. I read most of this story, and then as the main character of this story was leaving her abusive relationship, I got this really bad feeling that she might go back to him. And I wasn't ready to read a story like that, so I looked up online if that was indeed the end of this story, and when I learned that that is indeed how this story ends, I decided to not finish it. So I thought maybe Runaway is just not the story collection for me. If these are all tense stories about weird and morally grey or morally reprehensible relationships, maybe I should be reading another book. And the article I found made me feel like maybe Dear Life would be a better choice. So I borrowed that from the library and started reading it. Dear Life starts with the story To Reach Japan, which is about a young-ish poet, a woman with a husband and child. As this woman is leaving her husband at a train station, she is off to look after a house and her child for the summer. This story was fine, if a little uncomfortable. My main issue with it was the subject matter. It is about infidelity, and that is not something I am particularly interested in reading about. And so once I finished this story and I didn't feel compelled whatsoever to keep reading, I decided that this much of Alice Munro was enough for me. I have made up my mind about her work enough to know that I do not want to read more of it. I do want to note that this is a fairly shallow critique of her work. I feel uncomfortable by how she lived as a person and how she handled her relationship with her daughter and how she sided with an abusive husband. And I personally did not find her short stories interesting to me. There are plenty of other people who enjoy her stories deeply, and I do not believe that reading her stories makes anyone a bad person and enjoying her stories. I think it's important to read critically and to listen to your own heart. So if you are interested in tense dynamics, slightly strange and morally grey characters, and nice, interesting short stories that talk about social expectations and imperfect women, then maybe you would enjoy Alice Munro's books and her short stories. I am not compelled to read more of her books, and I am happy to sort of not like her books from a distance. I was thinking if I kept on reading, I might just give an unfair and overly hateful review of her books, which they do not deserve. But this is to say that I am happy to be making this video and to be done with Alice Munro and her books, and to give a little bit of platform and a little bit more attention to Andrea Skinner, who does deserve to be heard about and to be known about, and for her story to be centered in discussions about Alice Munro. And I am ready to move on to the next person whose books I will be reading, who is Herta Müller, a Romanian author who won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 2009. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope to see you next week. I hope you read a lot and that you enjoyed this video. Bye!